When you're thinking about moving to Washington State, you're thinking about Mount Rainier, you're thinking about the Cascades, you're thinking about Puget Sound. We're going to let you know what it's really like moving to Washington State that other real estate agents sometimes are conveniently not telling you, but are essential for you to know.
That's right. We're Joe and Charity, and we help people just like you every week who are considering moving to the Puget Sound area. So stick around. You're going to want to hear all of the inside scoop on what it's like to live here.
And you're going to want to stick around for the last point because I'm going to show you from personal experience how to avoid being eaten by an orca. Okay, that might not happen at all, but nonetheless, stick around for the last one. It's important as well.
The first thing that you may not know about Washington is that it's not all green. It is not all green.
Not even close.
No, it's not. The western side of Washington, where we live over here in Olympia, Seattle, Puget Sound, what most people think about, it's very green. In fact, it rains over 50 inches a year here in Olympia, so there's no way for it not to be green. Trees are green, the ground is green, the mid-range, whatever's right in the middle is green. There's moss that grows everywhere. But on the other side of Washington,
well, it's a little bit different. The other side of the state, as I like to refer it, is once you get over the Cascades and get into central and eastern Washington, it becomes much drier. Matter of fact, the middle part of the state is pretty much a high mountain plain desert. So it is really dry. You're going to run into your rattlesnake. You're going to find one in your boot if you're like Woody on maybe not, but you're going to get all the way over to Spokane, and then it's going to once again pick up to be a little bit more trees as you get into the mountain range on that side of the state. But the vast majority of the state isn't as green as you would anticipate.
Yeah. In fact, we had a trip one time coming back from Spokane, and we were being attacked by tumbleweeds. I had never experienced that before, and you think of tumbleweeds being in like the old westerns, but there was this crazy windstorm and we were literally dodging tumbleweeds as they were just coming after us for miles after miles.
It was reverse Frogger. We were trying to not run them over as they jumped in front of us as the driver.
I was glad you were the driver.
I think I was too, but we won't go into that.
So I want to tell you a little bit of a story about the green and the brown side of Washington. I had personally only lived on the western side until right before we got married. And Joe was from Spokane, and I went over there to visit his family, and I actually felt betrayed by Washington because it didn't look like anything I had ever experienced. I had not been to the other side of the Cascades, and I was like, what is this foreign land? It's so bizarre. This isn't Washington, but guess what? It's Washington.
It is. So if you're looking just for the lush side, if you're looking for the green, if you're looking for Puget Sound, all of the water, you really are thinking to yourself, I'm going to live in the Puget Sound area. If you would like 4 seasons, a little cold winter, you want some snow, you would want a little less rain for sure, then Eastern Washington might be a place that you would consider. Spokane is one of those locations. Actually, we're going to get to this in a minute, the second largest city in Washington State.
So now that you know that Washington is basically 2 different states.
2 different states.
We're going to bust one more myth, which is it rains here all the time. So first of all, there's this thing called the rain shadow effect. And if you like to study the weather, then you probably know what this is. But the mountains create a rain shadow, which creates this dry zone. And in fact, in Sequim, they get only 16 inches of rain a year, which compared to Olympia at 50 is crazy. It is really, really dry there. But it's out on the Olympic Peninsula. So you think, oh, everything out there on the Olympic Peninsula must be green and lush. But nope, there's just this little pocket of pretty much dry land.
Yeah, it's within an hour of the Hoh National Rainforest, which is the only non-tropical rainforest in the world. So it's a little bit of a disconnect there for sure if you're not used to it. But the primary thing that you have to understand about the rain is we do have the winter, and it's rainy and it's gray and it's drizzly, and that lasts for 2 to 3 months, and it's kind of main thrust of it. Now you have both sides of it are a little bit bumper. So your spring is going to be a little off and on. You're going to get some sunny days, a sunny week, and then it's going to turn back into more gray. But we have an amazing, and I think it's 3 to 4 months, summer into fall that is unparalleled in beauty and gorgeous.
Yeah, everybody here just waits for that. Yeah, the summers here are pretty much undescribable if you've never lived in an area like this. It is green because of all the rain that we've gotten. and it's perfect weather between 75 and 85. And like Joe said, we hardly get any rain at all. So the rain isn't constant. And even when it is raining, it's different. Like today, it's sunny right now, but about 10 minutes ago, it was cloudy. And about half an hour ago, it was hailing. And then about 4 hours ago, it was sunny. And then about a half an hour before that, it was rainy. So it's not constant, it's just intermittent.
Yeah, you kind of almost get 4 seasons in a day for several months of the year, which, how delightful is that? Or at least that's how I view it. Like I had already mentioned earlier, Spokane on the eastern side is completely different. Spokane gets about 16 inches of rain per year, which is not a lot at all. Some of that's really going to come in the form of snow in the winter or some type of really wet, heavy raining in the winter. It is a completely different type of experience and much colder, especially when you get into your winter months. So depending on what you're looking for, because that might be quite compelling, it's a good option for you when you're considering moving here. Otherwise, join us on this side where you just kind of get out and you get used to it and you enjoy the Puget Sound and Mount Rainier.
So the rain isn't the only thing that varies dramatically. We also have a good variance in political opinions.
So Washington's political divide really is red, blue, and I think there's a lot of purple, but we'll get to that in here in a second. But it's divided similarly. It's easy to delineate because you're thinking about the Cascades. If you're west of the Cascade Mountains, you're normally blue, and if you're east of the Cascade, you're normally red. And I think that's really important to know. Now, that's not to say that there's not a lot of red within the western side or a lot of blue on the eastern side. It's just kind of a good rule of thumb to think about that. So think about your urban centers like Seattle, around Puget Sound, the state capital. Those are all your areas where you're thinking, yeah, those are pretty blue. And you're right, if you've guessed that. You get over to the other side, it's completely different.
In fact, on the other side, residents at Eastern Washington sometimes have a complaint that their needs are not represented as well as this side because there is a larger population here. There's a larger population of blue. And so they feel like, we would like our red needs developed a little bit more and attended to. So you're going to get that a little bit, but Joe, tell us about purple.
Well, now purple is what I like to call our area. Because we are in the state capital, there's a political both sides, obviously, because state capital, not everybody is one way here. It's a little bit more homogenized. It's a little bit more interacting. And because of that, the purple is, we really have a great relationship. The purple is the connection of both thoughts and being able to care for people on both sides of the aisle. I think that that happens a lot here in Olympia. That has been our experience where we have friends that are one way and friends on the other side of the aisle. And we've been able to have Super Bowl parties together, care about each other, and really respect one another, even though we have differing political views, which I think is fantastic and I appreciate a ton.
So if part of making your decision to move to Washington State has to do with politics, which we are seeing a lot of clients move because of politics, then what's important to know is just because you might be red, you don't need to feel like you're not going to fit in here on the western side, or just because vice versa. In fact, there are pockets and areas that have a little bit stronger on each side. For instance, when you're closer in Olympia, it's going to feel more blue. When you're further out, like towards Tumwater and even out towards the outskirts, it's going to feel more red. So even in Eastern Washington, there's parts of Spokane that lean red and parts of Spokane that lean blue. So there's really can be a place for you. So don't worry about having to choose politically based on just one location. So the political differences shape not only how people interact, but also there is something that you may have heard about that influences the way that people react, and Joe's going to tell us about it.
And that is called the Seattle freeze. It is something that actually has been noted and documented that sometimes it's a little difficult to get to know people here in the Northwest and around Seattle. Now, I don't necessarily think it's because they're not welcoming or inviting. I think it's because actually a little bit of logistics. When it's cold outside and you're outside and you pass by somebody, you're not stopping the chat because you're getting rained on, you're cold, you want to get indoors, you want to have your coffee. And once you get inside to have your coffee, you just want a little bit of space to yourself to breathe and to think because you're just hurrying in. I think people experience that, and that's where that really is the root of that. Where the truth of the matter is people in the Northwest are really wonderful people, and give them some time, and that's the key ingredient here, give them some time, and they're going to become great people that are really loyal, wonderful friends.
Another thing that contributes to that is just a major city. As you know, New York is also known for the same thing. The bigger the city, the more you're going to experience that. But you get down to some place like where we live here in Olympia, Olympia. It's super casual. People are laid back, happy to have a conversation. And although you may experience it a little differently from where you've lived, especially if you've lived in the South, you will notice that people are friendly. In fact, we've experienced it in ways like neighborhood barbecues and gatherings. Everybody's really friendly around here. There's always people out walking, saying hi, talking to each other, petting the dog, all of those things. So don't worry about the Seattle freeze. You are not going to experience it to the effect that you've probably read about it.
And part of that is because in a smaller community and you continually go back to the same spots, the same restaurants, the same coffee shops, the same pub, the same area with your dog, the same running parks, whatever it might be. Because it's smaller, you're going to run into the same type of people or the same people over the course of time. And it's just a slow, warm induction into the warmth of the Northwest. That is here. And Olympia definitely has that because we're just not as big. We're not as busy. We're more laid back, like we've talked about in other videos, a little bit more conscientious towards things, towards the environment, a little granola. And makes us, I think, just a little bit more friendly, easier to get to know for sure.
Speaking of community, let's talk about where you might want to live if you're planning on moving to Washington State, and it may be some areas that other real estate agents haven't told you about.
Because we've got a lot of great ones. So I realize that every agent wants you to live in their area. But there are some real key things that you need to know about the area, about where you might want to live that sometimes you might not really consider depending on the agent that you're working with. So let's talk about living south of Seattle. The reason south of Seattle works and why people choose it is because of some real major conveniences. The primary one is to get to the airport. The south of Seattle in SeaTac, so it's very convenient for people who live in Tacoma, even down here into Olympia, or south of Seattle. The main part is because to get through Seattle itself, you have to go underneath the convention center. And I don't know who ever designed this, but it is a 2-lane road for all of the millions of people to get through underneath. Some people refer it affectionately called the birthing canal because it is a pain to get through. And as I suppose moms know, it's a pain. I don't know, never had it.
It's a pain.
But it just is kind of, I think it's a good imagery. You're like, oh, that's difficult. Okay, great. Now you know really the big thing to know about if for convenience is a big deal to you.
Yeah, we have lived north of Seattle, in Seattle, and south of Seattle. And it's always a big deal when you're ready to go to the airport. You got to plan ahead and all of that. But when you are on the north side, you can never plan for what the traffic's going to be through Seattle. So it's a lot of time you have to leave yourself. Here on this side, we can basically plan ahead, look at our map, see what it's looking like. If there's an accident, it's a big deal. But other than that, it's so much more convenient.
So much more convenient. And especially when you have football games, Seattle's a sports town. You have football games, you have Krakens, you have big concerts that happen. All of those put a lot of heavy strain on the traffic in the downtown Seattle area. We just don't experience that here, which is delightful.
Yes, and that's all in the south side of Seattle. So yeah, so really ideal to live down on this side. And in fact, the other reason why it's ideal is because it's cheaper down here. I don't know why it's more expensive there because it's less convenient, but it is cheaper to live south of Seattle than it is to live north or east of Seattle.
Yeah, that's right. When we think about how much the difference of cost is, it's really about 40% cheaper to live south of Seattle. Tacoma has better prices. Olympia has a lot better prices. You could have a lot more waterfront or water view opportunities for far less than you could pay for the homes up in the Seattle area. So if those are things that are on your mind that you think of ideal to live in the Puget Sound area or to live in Washington State, those are some definite considerations that you want to know.
Now, if you're thinking, I don't know about this west side, everything you guys are talking about makes me feel like I want to be in Eastern Washington, then that's a great option also. It's so varied and diverse there and dry, as we mentioned before. In fact, in Spokane, which is where Joe was born, and we raised our kids there for several years, it's a beautiful place to live. If you like the outdoors, they also have wonderful bike trails, really close skiing, wonderful weather, except right in the middle of the winter when it's not so wonderful. But if you are thinking anything about checking out all of those areas, we have an agent on our team that actually represents people in Spokane. We could connect you. So just message us down below in the captions and say Spokane.
Yeah. Matter of fact, one of the wonderful parks is called Riverside State Park. It is a great place to walk across the Spokane River, walk along the river, mountain bike in that area is absolutely fantastic. Great place for kids, great place just for an afternoon stroll with friends. brands, and a lot of really good restaurants that you're going to want to look into, because Spokane has really reinvented itself over the last 30 years, and it's so impressive to see what they've done. So it's a great place to live as well. Big fan of all of Washington State. We just like it here most, but that's a great place and a great option for you as well.
Yeah, and we're just mentioning a few areas on this side and that side, but Washington is full of great areas. You've got cute little quaint towns like Leavenworth and Wenatchee up by the mountains, and you've got Yakima that's really nice and hot and dry, and you've got Bellingham, which is right up by the Canadian border and beautiful, and you've got everything out on the Olympic Peninsula. There's so much variation in Washington, and we would be happy to walk you through all the differences. If that's something that would be helpful for you in your decision, just go ahead and reach out to us and ask us some questions. What are the other considerations you should be thinking about when you're trying to decide where to live?
And I would suggest it's around this spot. Either you're going to lean into a big city or you're going to lean away from a big city. Some people love hustle and bustle and activity and people on top of themselves and just craziness and mayhem, which is great. That's why Seattle exists and some of our larger cities in Washington State. However, there's other people that kind of lean away from that. That is, they appreciate that that is within their reach, that they could go visit it, that they can connect within an hour or 2 hours of travel, or they're thinking they lean away from it because they're more focused on, say, the outdoors or the environment that they live in, or they're thinking, I would rather just kind of be by myself on the side of a mountain doing yoga. Great. That's a little bit of a framework to consider. Do I like to lean into it? Or do I want to lean away from it and just appreciate it from afar and interact with it far less frequently?
Yeah, we have friends that reached the same stage of life as us. They lived on a farm, basically, and they moved to Seattle because they were ready to just lean in, and they are loving life. They're living there and they're walking every day to get to all their little coffee shops and doing all the things, and it's the best time of their life. Others, on the other hand, have lived in big cities, and now they're like, I don't want to do that rat race anymore. I want to live somewhere where I've got the green space really close to me and I can breathe deeply and there's hardly anybody, walking around me. That is creating the ideal stage of life.
So it just depends on which way and what you're thinking about for your preferred future. Both of them are wonderful. Both of them are very much different in where you would choose to live. So as your consideration, hey, do you lean in or do you lean out?
Something else that real estate agents might not discuss with you as you are trying to figure out which area is best is the economic realities of different areas of Washington.
Yeah, when we're on this side of the state, we think a lot in terms of high tech. We think of what's happened with Microsoft. We think about Amazon. We think about downtown Seattle and the structures around there and Bellevue. There's a lot happening. We think about Olympia itself and the state capitol and the legislative process and all the jobs that go into that. Matter of fact, in our area, it's about 30% of the jobs of employment are through the capital, through the state. So it's a lot of things that are going on. And that's a major consideration because that's not a consideration for every part of the state. And that's just on the western side of the state. On the eastern side, and as you go through, there's a lot of farmland, there's rural. You get over to Spokane, which is the second largest city in Washington, and it's just like any other major hub. There's a lot of industry that is going on, there's high-tech jobs, there's new development in its own right, really brilliant. So you'll just want to think about the overarching lifestyle that you're wanting to live because both of them hold really good economic futures depending on what you're looking for.
One other thing that affects your economic future is taxes. So other agents may not tell you that Washington, well, we do have some taxes that are higher than other places, but one thing that we do not have is state income tax. So especially if you are reaching retirement age, there is a lot of money to be saved if you live here because you will not be paying retirement on the income that you're making off of your retirement funds.
Yes, which, come on, good news for Washington, good news for you if you're considering coming here for some of the other states, i.e. California and New York, or any of the other places that not to be mentioned. And one of the other things which I think is great is we do have some damn cheap electricity. Do you see what I did there? We do have hydroelectric dams in Washington State. And so because of that, we do have fairly good prices for electricity, which I think is helpful, just something to note.
It's plentiful here. And the other thing that's plentiful here, obviously, is water. We have some clients moving to the area and they said this will be the first time they've drank out of the tap without feeling scared.
Yeah, no worries here. We do have a lot of really fresh, clean, good water. And if that's one of your considerations, one more thing of why you should live here.
Obviously, there is a lot to finding your perfect place in Washington.
So if your vision of Washington is in the Sound and swimming with orcas, bless your heart, I'm not going to join you. I will help you find a home though. Or if you're thinking to yourself, I like the other side of the state, that sounds pretty fantastic, well, great. So reach out to us at a number below, call, text, or jump on our calendar. We'll help you in this side of the state or help you connect with someone on the other one to make sure that you get what you need moving to Washington.
And if this video has been helpful for you, then keep watching because the next one is even better.